Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Community Connections brought to you by our Elixir Kitchen team of the Cancer Rehabilitation and Survivorship Program at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center. Thank you so much for joining us for another wonderful class. We have some great nutrition tips and recipes in store for you today. My name is Jeremy Capone. I am the wellness chef, and joined, as always, by our amazing registered dietitian, Daniela Fedini. Hello, Daniela.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy New Year, everyone. Can I still say that? Today we're excited to bring you the latest research on nutrition and chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy. I know that's a bit of a mouthful. You can call it a part two to what we did in September of 2023 when we talked a bit about the peripheral neuropathy, but we focused more on foods that can support the function of the nervous system and how to stay safe in the kitchen. For those who are not familiar with what I'm going to call CIPN, okay? So CIPN, chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy. It is a common side effect of some chemotherapy treatments and other cancer treatments that affect the nerves located outside of the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, so more of the long nerves that are in your in the periphery of your body, right? So your fingers, hands, arms. And the symptoms, if it's affecting the sensory nerves, it can be like a tingling, pins and needles sensation. It could also be numbness or feeling of pain. There can be trouble feeling or distinguishing between hot and cold, which can make it dangerous in the kitchen or anywhere by that matter. And if it's your motor nerves, then you might have trouble with balance and tripping and falling. Your coordination might be off. Muscle strength might not be great. It's hard to pick up objects. And also you can have trouble with constipation or some clumsiness. Now, it sounds like all doom and gloom, and it really does affect quality of life. It's good to know that it's not permanent for everybody, but unfortunately for some it is. And it's underreported, like people don't usually report it, but I would say probably about half to 75% of the population who get treatment with chemotherapy agents that have that neurotoxicity experience it. More research is happening in it. And what we're going to talk about is the research in nutrition. So there is a little bit. And after our session in September, Jeremy found this great article about vitamin D and CIPN that was published in the Journal of the National Comprehensive Cancer Network in November of 2023. So brand new research. What the researchers found was that if you had a vitamin D deficiency before starting treatment, that might increase the incidence or severity of the peripheral neuropathy that you experience. And what they did was they looked at the blood work and incidence of peripheral neuropathy in over 1,100 patients with breast cancer getting a specific kind of chemo called paclitaxel, a chemo that's known to have a neurotoxicity. And the study showed that 21% of the people who had a vitamin D deficiency before starting treatment experienced CIPN, whereas only 14% of those without deficiency did. And this was considered a significant finding in the research. They didn't stop there. They thought, okay, is there a direct effect? So they went to mice. They looked at mice, they fed the mice a regular diet, or they fed them a vitamin D deficient diet for 2 months, and then gave them this paclitaxel treatment. And they found that the vitamin D deficient mice had more nerve damage. So what does this mean for us? Well, we're not yet at the point where we can come out and say, supplement with vitamin D before starting treatment. We still need more high quality research. But, you know, we have a cooking and nutrition demo here. So what we can do, and what Jeremy has been able to do for us, is create some delicious recipes that are rich in vitamin D. And then we're also going to look at incorporating some other nutrients that are good for the nervous system. So that's enough of me talking. The great recipes that Jeremy has prepared for us are 1, a black bean and trout and almond salsa. Sounds great. 2, a mushroom tofu stroganoff. Sounds intriguing. And 3, a peanut butter cocoa smoothie. And who doesn't need a cocoa smoothie on this January day? Okay, so our first recipe, the fatty fish used in this recipe, the trout, is an excellent source of vitamin D. And I don't know if you knew, only a few foods contain vitamin D naturally, and fatty fish is one of them. The other is egg yolks. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Daniela. So yes, our first recipe, we're going to try to highlight some of the nutrition and the ingredients that Daniela just mentioned. And then we'll also sprinkle in a few tips on how to make the cooking process a little bit more accessible, a little bit easier, especially if you are experiencing peripheral neuropathy or any other sort of mobility issues that can, pose as a barrier when cooking. So we'll talk about a few different tools that are also might be handy in the kitchen as we go through. Okay, so to start, we're making this baked black bean dish with our fish, with our fatty fish. The flavors are sort of inspired from some Spanish cooking. I love just the simplicity of it, just a few ingredients to really make the main star, I guess, shine. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to start off with our cooking vessel. So you can do this in anything that is oven proof or oven safe, whatever is easier to handle. Sometimes these like baking pans might be a little bit easier to handle, or a small saute pan that is oven safe that can work as well. And what I'll do is, if you haven't watched enough of our shows already, I think you already knew I was probably going to go for the parchment paper at one point. I'm going to line my baking dish with parchment paper. This is just going to make cleanup much easier, and especially if you are dealing with any pain or any sensation, challenging sensation with your hands, cleaning and scrubbing is probably not something that you want to do, right? So we're going to line this, and what we'll do is I'll take a big piece of parchment, and this works for anything that is oven safe, like I mentioned. So if I had like a circular saute pan, I could do this with this rectangle baking dish over as well, as long as it's bigger than the pan, right? So running it under a little bit of water, crumpling it up so it's a little bit more malleable, and then that way I can tuck it right into my pan. That way it just saves the pan from a lot of sort of caked on food. Okay, so pan is ready to go. We're going to take a tin of black beans. Again, sort of leaning on some of the more convenient products can be very helpful, where I don't have to do a lot of prep. I don't have to do a lot of extra work. These are already cooked, right? So we just want to do a quick drain and rinse. Opening the can pose a challenge though for some. So your traditional can opener, if it's difficult to hold on to, they do have battery operated ones, electric ones, that you can just clamp on, press a button, and it sort of cuts around for you. So that's a wonderful adaptive tool. There are some other ones as well, again, where it requires a lot less manipulation. So if you need some assistance with a can opener, check out some of those battery operated, those electric ones. I think they're pretty good. Okay, so one can. I'm gonna go into our baking dish here. I'm also going to add a little bit of water. So I'll just put it into the can, and about a 1/4 cup of water to this, just to give it a little bit of moisture, because it is going to bake in the oven. I don't want it to dry out completely. I had some chopped onion and bell pepper. Any other extra veg you want to throw in here would be a fantastic idea. The chopping of it, again, if you're not as comfortable, or if it's a little difficult to manage a traditional knife, you can go ahead and throw it in like a food chopper, those electric food choppers or food processors, to make it a lot easier for sure. So I'm going to put about 1/2 cup, well, 3/4 cup of the chopped onions and peppers in here. For seasonings, I'm gonna add a little bit of smoked paprika, about a teaspoon of smoked paprika, teaspoon of oregano, dried oregano in here. That smoked paprika is gonna give this a really, really nice sort of depth of flavor with our black beans. And then I'll add maybe just a little pinch of salt. What's nice about this dish is it's all in one pan. So I don't need a separate pan for my fish. I'm gonna bake it right on top. So we'll give this just a little mix. And sort of flatten it out a little bit to the size of your pan. So we have our little black bean mix ready to go. That's done, and then we'll add our fish on top. This again, you can use any type of fish. I think from Daniela's points, the fattier fish are ones that we want to lean on. This is a steelhead trout. You can use rainbow trout, salmon, whatever you like for this dish. And you can cut them up into, if you're cooking for like 4 portions or 6 portions, you can obviously cut the fillet up into those sides, or you can just leave it whole, which is nice. I think it presents really well, and you can just flake it up after it's baked. So place that fish right on top of the pan. And I'll add maybe just a little bit of olive oil. Top, like a tablespoon, I don't need too much. And just a little pinch of salt for this. Again, I'm going to be introducing other flavors after, so I don't need too much, just a little bit. And that's it. This is going to go into the oven, baked 425 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, I want to get some nice color on the salmon once it starts to flake apart easily and it's cooked all the way through. And that's pretty much it. So that's going to go into the oven. While that's in the oven,
So Jeremy,
yes.
What do you think? Should I just give a bit of information now about the trout and the vitamin D? Yeah, okay. So we talked about the fatty fish having a natural source of vitamin D. So if we're looking at the trout, about 2.5 ounces, 75 grams, or the size of the palm of your hand, or what do I have here? My deck of cards, would give you 148 international units of vitamin D. So what does that mean? Well, people over 9, the age of 9, I guess that's still a child, to about 70, need 600 international units of vitamin D. People over 70 need 800. So 148 international units means we would be meeting about 25% of our needs through that piece of trout that's in the pan. If we were using salmon, Atlantic salmon, let's say, the same size would give us a little bit more, 206 international units, and that would be closer to 33%. Okay, so that's enough math. Back into the kitchen.
Thanks, Daniela. Okay, so the salmon and the black beans are baking in the oven. And as the black beans sort of soften, those flavors from the smoked paprika and the oregano are really going to intensify, which is wonderful. While that's baking, we're gonna put together a quick little topping or a little salsa. And again, in taking inspirations from some of my favorite Spanish dishes, we're gonna make an almond salsa. So I love the idea of this toasted almonds and the texture it gives, but also the flavor it gives, with a little bit of the other spices and the little bit of the saltiness from some olives in there as well. It's going to play really, really well with the fish. So sliced almonds, you can get these in most grocery stores. I just toasted them up in a pan. You can toast them up in the oven just to get some of those oils out and to sort of transform the flavor a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna add a bigger portion. So I'm gonna make about half a cup. I'll add about half a cup of almonds here. All right, in a bowl. I'm gonna put a couple tablespoons of chopped olives. This is optional. If you don't like olives, obviously don't use olives. But even just a little bit of these chopped olives are going to give this really nice sort of punch of flavor. And because they add some saltiness as well, I don't need to add any salt to this part. So a couple tablespoons of the olives in there, and then some fresh herbs. I'm using cilantro. Not a big fan of cilantro. You can use parsley, you can use basil, you can use mint, you can use other fresh herbs as well. But again, that freshness from the herbs is going to cut through some of that brininess, that saltiness from the olives. Now, one quick thing on herbs. You can see I've chopped these pretty finely. Again, if you're not as comfortable or you have a little bit of challenges with a traditional knife, you can definitely throw your herbs in a food processor and let it whiz. Don't go too far because the more it goes, more moisture will come out and it'll get kind of wet. You just want to pulse it till it's broken down and you're good to go. But that would, be a lot easier than having to chop it. There are adaptive and modified knives on the market, which are fantastic. Ones with sort of angled handles. Also ones with a curved blade and a handle on top. Call that sort of a rocker or a mezzaluna, which can be a little bit easier than holding a traditional knife. So there are a few other options. If you are using traditional knife, then one recommendation for chopping herbs, any herbs really, we use a technique called the rock chop, but I'll just show you really quickly. So rock chop, what I'm doing is I have my hand on my knife, okay? And when I have my hand on my knife, I do a pinch grip, so thumb and index finger, and you pinch the part of the blade that is just above the handle. I don't want to hold the handle. I want to actually hold the blade there. And then with the rest of my fingers, I'm going to actually curl it around the handle, okay? And again, for some people, this might not be comfortable, might not work. But if you can, this is the traditional grip, the safe grip, and rocking up and down. I'm keeping the point or the tip of my knife always in contact with my cutting board. And I'm just doing this rocking action with my wrist, okay? With my other hand, very important, keep it out of the way of the blade. So I'm actually keeping it flat and on top of my knife. On top of my knife, I don't have to worry about cutting myself. Near the cutting board, then yes, you might run into some issues. So on top of the knife, and I'm just rocking up and down. And you're keeping the tip of the knife pretty much at the same point, but I am just moving the angle of the back of the knife back and forth just to cover the span of my herbs, and I can stop to kind of gather them. But again, safe, but also very effective for cutting herbs is this sort of rocking technique, okay? Another thing I'll mention quickly, Daniela did mention sometimes the challenge with peripheral neuropathy in cooking is the sensation and numbness of your fingers, which can be difficult if you're cutting or using a knife. If you have the sensation, just using the feel of the knife, you can sort of guide and know where it's going. If you don't have that sensation, that can be very difficult and it can be very easy to cut yourself. So a little tip, and this was actually brought up from someone we've worked with in one of our groups who was incredible, made this suggestion of these nylon or cut-proof gloves, which are fantastic. You can find these online. We've actually provided a list from our past class of some of these tools. We'll include another list in this section, so you could probably find it in the description section, but these are cut-proof gloves, so you can put them on and you don't have to be as worried about cutting yourself because the knife won't actually cut through the glove, so you can do your prep with these. So those are fantastic to have as well. All right, enough cutting tips. Let's finish this dish. We have, again, the olives, the almonds, those chopped herbs, some of that as well. And then some lime juice. You can use lemon. I just want some of that acid. So I have a few of these little pieces here, but I would say about 2 to 3 tablespoons. I want this nice and fresh and bright. So obviously not your traditional salsa, but it's this combination of different flavors and fresh herbs that I guess constitute salsa. And we'll put a little bit of olive oil. And I'm making a big batch here, so I want enough to coat the ingredients. So I'd say about 2 tablespoons. This is a slow pour. It might look like I'm putting a lot. This is a very slow spout on the bottle. And then just give it a nice little stir.
Glad you clarified that. I thought you were drowning it in the olive oil.
Sometimes it
Which
looks like
which
I'm
is okay
throwing
too.
excessive amounts. All right, and there we go. It's really, really nice, fresh almond salsa. Smells incredible. Salmon is done. Our other version, our TV version, and this one I did in a pan, baking pan. You can see still lined it with parchment. We have those black beans, the little salmon fillets on top. Beautiful. And again, you could just lift this right out of the pan. It'd be awesome. And then just to finish it, I'm gonna top it with some of this delicious almond salsa. And there we go. There's our baked black beans with trout and almond salsa. All right, one recipe down.
Wow, that was incredible. It looks amazing. And the other thing about that dish is that in using the black beans and the almonds, you're getting some magnesium, which is also good for nerve function. There's some research on that. And the almonds and that, I don't know, generous or not generous pour of olive oil is a good source of vitamin E. And I'll talk a little bit more about that research in one of our future recipes.